There's a great website called Comic Book Plus. You may have heard of it before, maybe not, but in this video, I'm going to run through exactly what's inside this great website that has hundreds of thousands of free comic books that you can use. You can use them for virtually any reason, such as print on demand or digital downloads. You can use it for your website or making any sort of social media posts. These are public domain. And what public domain means is that there's no copyright restrictions on any of the comic books inside this website. I'm going to go here to the categories section right here. I'm going to click the drop-down menu, and we're going to see a whole bunch of different categories that you can pick. So I'm going to go here to romance, for example, and then you'll see a whole bunch of romance comics are going to come up down below. Now, I do want to point out, it says here page 1 of 6, so you want to make sure to not forget there's multiple pages here. I'm going to click the little next button, and that will take me to 2 of 6. And there's a lot of romance comics here. So I'm going to go to exciting romances, for example. And then right underneath here, you'll see all the different issues will pop up. I'm going to click on number 5, completely at random. This is from 1951. Here we've got, oh my goodness, some hanky-panky going on here in the park. And I'm going to click on the actual cover, and it'll just take me right into the comic book. And then as you can see here, we've got circular images that are black and white, pretty clean. You could easily extract these out and make print-on-demand designs or any sort of digital downloads. So here we've got the actual comic book, and as I click forward, I'm just clicking on the page, and that advances it by 1 page. You can also, at the top, you can go previous page or next page. You can go to the first page of the book, you can go to the last page of the book, and you can even jump ahead to the next one in the list right here. So this now takes us to Exciting Romances number 6. Some of these are old beat up comics. As you can see here, there's some pencil that's been drawn on the poor guy's forehead, and there's some nicks and damage on the spine, but the comic book itself is still pretty cool, and you can see all sorts of great scans. There are differences in the quality of the scans. Some books have high quality scans, some books not so much, but there's so many comic books that you can flip through for hours and hours and never come across the same book twice. Okay, let's talk real quickly here about the differences between copyright infringement and trademark infringement. So I do want to point out everything on Comic Book Plus is public domain. And it says right down here at the bottom, we aim to house only public domain content. And what public domain means is the images themselves can be used for virtually any purpose. In other words, there's no copyright restrictions on any of the images themselves. However, I do want to throw out a couple books that are buried inside here that although the images are public domain, the characters themselves are trademarked. So I would recommend that you don't use the following, even though they're public domain. Here we've got Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, this is a Fawcett comic book, but nowadays Captain Marvel, also known as Shazam, is owned by DC. So even though this image right here is public domain, if you were to upload this to a site like Redbubble or TeePublic, it's possible that DC could launch a trademark violation, even though the image is in the public domain. Here's another one. This is Captain Marvel Jr. That's part of the Shazam family as well. I would recommend avoiding Captain Marvel Jr. And the third one here is Mary Marvel, one of my favorites, but she is part of the DC Comics family of Shazam. So legally, you might be right to use these, but if you want to avoid a headache or a potential headache, you may just want to steer clear of those. Here's another one. This is Archie. Archie has public domain comics sitting inside of Pep Comics. These are from the 1940s and 1950s. And I would recommend you steer clear of this because even though the comics themselves are in the public domain, transposing those images into artwork like a fine art print or a t-shirt, that changes the rules, and trademark lawyers sometimes get involved and say you can't do that. And here's the last one. We've got Barbie and Ken, public domain comic book. Really cool comic, by the way. I've read this. Barbie is a flight attendant. Of course, it's from the 1960s, so even in Barbie's wildest fantasy, she can't be the pilot. She's the flight attendant, as we have a male pilot up front. Anyway, I didn't write the thing, so please don't write me angry letters. But I will say this is a really cool comic book, and I highly recommend reading through some of these if you just want a good laugh, because some of these are sort of old-timey vintage, but they've also got great-looking images. All right, let's go over how to save an image. It's pretty straightforward. When you find a comic book that you like, in this case, I'm going to click on Captain Havoc number 6, and I'm going to click into the actual comic book, and we can see here there's a bunch of black and white images, and if I right-click, I can save as. So it depends on your web browser, of course. I'm using Firefox, but it works the same in Google Chrome. Right-click and then save. That will save a JPEG file right to your hard drive. Okay, let's go over 3 strategies that you can use when you're making comic book based designs. The first one is to use the comic book image as is. So here I am on Adventures into the Unknown, which is a horror comic, one of my favorites. I'm just going to click on a random one here. Number 10. This is a really nice looking cover. And what you can do is just upload this right to a t-shirt, just as is. You don't need to make any changes to it. The potential problem that you could run into is if somebody else does the exact same thing, then you could run into that on Redbubble or TeePublic where someone else says, hey, I've got the exact same design uploaded, and they could launch a copyright strike against you. Even though the image is in the public domain, these websites don't want you to have multiple images of the same thing up on their website. So what I would recommend you do is you take a design like this, beautiful cover, and you modify it. So you can crop it, or you could remove the background a little bit on, say, the sky, and that would change the design so that when you put it on a t-shirt, it would look really cool because the t-shirt itself would become the backdrop to the design. The second strategy is that you can change the meaning of the art. So here's a great example of a comic book cover that is pretty straightforward. There's nothing wrong with it. But what you can do is edit it either in Photoshop or Photopea or some sort of graphic design software, and you can change the text inside of it to make it completely different. So you're taking advantage of the beautiful old vintage artwork, but you're adding modern day meaning to it, and that can often result in a sale because people like really funny designs, but with professional artwork. The third strategy is that you can take a single image and you can create retro artwork, picture art from it. Here's an example. Here's a great picture from a comic book. This is Adventures into the Unknown number 10. And I'm going to take this picture right down here at the bottom. So I'm going to save the whole page, and then I'm going to crop this image out and simply put a decent background on it, like a circle or a square. I'm going to put a different color behind it. And then just like that, I've now got a vintage design that you could have for a sticker or a coffee mug or a t-shirt. I really hope you found this walkthrough helpful. I love using Comic Book Plus. There's a ton of different categories. You can also select by newsstand date if you know the actual date of the comic book. So if you want to look at 40s comic books or 50s comic books, you can also go right up to the top and you can just click on comic books right here. And when you do that, you're going to get to every single comic book that's on the website. It's like a site list. So by publisher, they've listed every single book. Hopefully you found this walkthrough helpful. Here's another video on how you can have some fun in the world of print on demand.